All right, so is Punisher number one good? Let's get into it. Now, in terms of story, just on a surface level, we're introduced to Joe Garrison, and Joe Garrison is a retired former SHIELD agent, which is pretty cool because we get insight in some of his tactical ability and also how he's able to have access to certain things. Now, at this point of the story, there is no more SHIELD. Now you might be wondering, there's no more Shield. Yeah, Shield was disbanded, but we know that Maria Hill is looking to kind of resurrect Shield in itself. Now we're not only introduced to Joe Garrison, but we're also introduced to his origin story. But this is the part that goes a little bit downhill for me in terms of storyline because it is too familiar to Frank Castle. When you look at the origin for Frank Castle and the origin for Joe Garrison, they're very similar. Now, does this make the story bad moving forward? No. For me, it does a couple of things. Number one, it gives me a fast introduction into this character. And number two, for anyone who's brand new to Punisher, maybe Frank Castle's not their first Punisher, and maybe it is Joe Garrison. So it is familiar in that sense. It doesn't make it bad, but for me, who's been reading comic books for a little bit, I'm like, this is pretty similar. Again, it doesn't make it bad. It's just my opinion and something that I wish was a little bit more divergent from Frank Castle, right? But it is what it is. And throughout the story, Joe is looking for someone called the Sokovian. And I would tell you more, but I don't want to spoil it too much until I get to the breakdown. So if you want me to break down the story, type in breakdown in the comments section. But going back, we're also introduced to some other characters. One of them happens to be AAA. Now, AAA is like the arms and analysis, and she used to work with Joe back in the Shield days. What's really interesting to note is that they labeled Joe as the gravedigger when he was in Shield. And that basically means he was the one to take out people in the shadows and to do some of the bigger missions.
What?
And throughout the book, we get a chance to see Joe in action, and he is an amazing Punisher, and he goes against some really powerful people. One of them happens to be Dr. Zabo, who transformed into Hyde. And Hyde is a really powerful character because he's gone against the likes of Thor. Has he won against Thor? No, but he has something which is basically a steroid of sorts, a super steroid that makes him hulkish, right? For lack of better words. So, what would I rate this? In terms of story, I'm definitely going to give this a 7. Was it an enjoyable one? Absolutely. It was 100% enjoyable. In terms of the art, I'm going to give the art a 9. This is very pleasant artwork to me. Nothing that makes me feel like, ah, man, I can't really engage with this art, right? Or feel what's happening within the art. It was pretty good. In terms of my anticipation for the next one, even though I gave the story a 7, it doesn't mean that the 7 is bound by a lackluster story. It's really bound by the anticipation. I am hyped to see what will happen next with Joe. And if I don't see Frank Castle for a really long time, I'm okay with that, right? I'm going to be super honest with you all. I've read Punisher books, but for me, it feels like Joe is my first true and tried Punisher, right? Um, and that's because I had to jump back and forth when it comes to like the Punisher series and getting to know the character. But this is like a really great introduction to the character. Yes, his storyline in terms of origin is very similar to Frank Castle, but at the same time, for a new reader who's just getting into the Punisher, this is a good introduction, right? A good entry point. And my anticipation would probably be at a 8, right, for this. So is it my cup of tea or go read it? I'm definitely going to say that it is a go read it. It's a great way to jump into Punisher. Will we see Frank Castle in the future? I know we will. It's going to move back to the status quo at some point. But going by what we know with Joe, I don't want to see Joe leave the platform, right? I kind of want to see him stay, or maybe Joe and Frank will team up, or maybe Joe will go against Frank too. A Punisher versus a Punisher. But with that being said, let me know if you want me to break down this book because I definitely didn't put a lot of panels into it. It's really good. The book is in front of me, and I just finished reading it. So, with that being said, this is Zen from Zen Multiverse saying peace, love, and prosperity. Type in breakdown if you want me to break down the book, and drop some likes to support and your comments. And if you've read the book, let me know your thoughts as well. Later, everyone.